Here's what's coming up next on Deconstructing Christian Nationalism with April Ajoy on Holy Smoke, Cigars and Spirituality.
I basically grew up believing that even though slavery was a thing, it was true Christians like Abraham Lincoln, who was a Republican, who freed the slaves. No one in the South was a Christian. They were all bad people. So it was Christians who abolished slavery, because we were on that side, obviously. And then basically racism was over. I literally never learned anything about Jim Crow, Black Wall Street, the massacre there. Like, I didn't know any of that. It was pretty much like, and yeah, there was like some Black people like couldn't vote for a while, but they really could. It was just like a misunderstanding. And then Martin Luther King came in and then fixed all of that. And we loved Martin Luther King because he was a Christian and we all supported him and he was great. And then basically that ended racism forever.
I really hope y'all pay attention to this episode because it's very telling. If you've ever wondered why Christian nationalists seem so detached from reality, this show is going to offer some insight. April Ajoy has dedicated her platform to fighting against Christian nationalism because she was born into Christian nationalism. She knows how it works from the inside out. It's like she's giving us insider information. Before we get deeper into the show, you may have noticed that we're a day late again. This episode was supposed to drop yesterday, but I've been in the bed sick all week with an allergy cold. I'm gonna be honest, I'm just glad it wasn't COVID. Am I the only one who wonders if you have COVID every time you get a sniffle or a scratchy throat? I'll be like, oh Lord, please don't let it be my time. It's worth noting, though, that our Patreon community has been feasting on this full episode now for the past 3 weeks. You may have seen some of the clips on the TFC.virtual YouTube channel. Now, there are 2 more new episodes currently available exclusively in our Patreon community. Black Women in African Spirituality 8 and Deconstructing Singles Ministry 2 are both live now in Patreon. Here's a clip from Deconstructing Singles Ministry 2 that blew our minds in real time.
This whole purity thing, it made me look at the icon of the church mother differently. Because when I grew up in church, those church mothers who never married, who never had kids, and it was like they got all of this anointing in exchange because they gave all of that up. And for me, it made me think after I came out, I was like, a lot of the church mothers I remember, I low-key think they were lesbians. And they just never, they suppressed it their whole life and dedicated their life to the Lord, cooking in the church, praying in the church. They got all this anointing. They got all this respect because a woman, after a certain age, if you haven't had kids and if you're queer, like closeted, you could pass. You could pass in the church because she done dedicated herself to the Lord. Mother so-and-so, God can keep you if you want to be kept.
That was Paul Best, a Philly-based professional storyteller who happens to be a beloved member of the faith community. If you want to check out Deconstructing Singles Ministry 2 in its entirety, you have 2 options. You can subscribe to our Patreon community, or number 2, you can purchase that episode a la carte from our Patreon account. The link to Patreon is in the show notes. All right, let's deconstruct Christian nationalism with April Ajoy. We're also joined by Autumn Rich Auntie Clay and our Lord and slanderer, Stephen Thurston. If you've ever wondered why I refer to him as a slanderer, here's one quick example. My birthday was on February 23rd, and this is the post that Stephen made to acknowledge my birthday in the patrons-only connection groups. The caption reads, "A picture of me yesterday in sackcloth and ashes as you all rallied around this pagan holiday of Lucifer Jr.'s birth. Stephen is a menace." Also, you can join me, Stephen, and Pamela for Holy Smoke Chicago on Saturday, March 8th at noon. The link to register is in the show notes. And as we start this episode, let me apologize in advance. My sound was off. My microphone was glitching, so just bear with me. But all right, you know what to do. Pull up a chair, light a stick if you want, and pour a dram if you please, as we deconstruct harmful theology and build beloved community one cigar at a time. Let's get to it. All right, y'all. We are back, deconstructing harmful theology and building beloved community one cigar at a time. This is a part two of deconstructing Christian nationalism. We just had part one where we discussed a few things. Our special guest, April Ajoy, is with us. April Ajoy, we got to give her a hand. We already did before, but we got to do it again.
Thank you.
Yes, we're so glad to have you. And in part one, the first half of this recording, we talked a little bit about Brian Carn telling women that they need to put their roses away. They need to get rid of their rose, and that we don't do wet dreams and holiness. In April, what did you say comes to mind when preachers talk about the rose?
The Rose of Sharon gives
Yes.
new meaning to it.
Yes. The next time one of y'all pastors tell y'all need to get rid of y'all rose, just reassociate it with the Rose of Sharon. Change it up real quick. Yeah, we also talked about our sex lives. Steve told us all of his darkest, deepest secrets in his sex life. So if you want to catch all of that, subscribe to Patreon and you can hear all about Steve's sex life.
Yes, me and Pam share great things together.
Oh, God.
It's a wild ride.
A wild ride. Double entendre.
Head swimming.
You're such a horrible person. Such a horrible person. Yeah, so y'all check out the part one of this episode in Patreon exclusively. But I want to give April Ajoy an opportunity to just say hello. She has a new book. It's called Spangled Jesus. I think it's so dope. I like books that are easy to read. Like in Spangled Jesus has been so easy to follow thus far. Because I've been in academia, but I don't like reading dense academic books. But April really provides some really good information, some historical data, and just does it in a really cool way. April, say hello. Tell us a little bit about Star Spangled Jesus.
Hello. Well, Star Spangled Jesus is my book that I wrote about me coming from Christian nationalism, being raised in it, but not knowing. Like I thought I was just being a good Christian, but realized later that it was actually Christian nationalism, and it's basically it's a kind of a combo, part memoir, part history lesson, part guide on just like what Christian nationalism is and how it has infiltrated the white evangelical church in America almost seamlessly, where it can be hard to tell the difference between the two.
Yes. I want to encourage everybody to get it. I think it's a really good read. It's a really good read. Before we go any further and get deeper into this conversation, I want to kick it over to Rich Auntie for the one rule. We got to do it every time we get together. This is what grounds us. This is what keeps us going. This is what keeps us rooted. Rich Auntie, give us the one rule.
Hey y'all, Rich Auntie reporting for duty. The one rule is very simple. We call it our North Star, and it was coined by our illustrious Bishop Big Time. And the one rule says that we honor each other's lived experiences and we don't lift theories over what people have actually lived. So we love to chalk it up. Healthy debates are welcome, but kindness is key. And if you forget that, we do have a goon squad, Bones and Glory, that will get you together and drag you in all the names.
Yes.
It basically comes from the greatest commandment theology, which says your love for God is totally displayed through how you love your neighbor, and that's an extension of how you love yourself. So you really can't fully love God if you don't love your neighbor, and you definitely can't fully love your neighbor if you don't love yourself. And for those people who are good bookers, you can find that in Matthew 22:34-40, but we know it's present in several different faith traditions. So we honor the Lord for the greatest commandment coined by our pastor, founder, and podcast host. Amen.
You're hilarious. You're hilarious. That was so churchy. Our illustrious bishop giving honor to God, all the ministers on the rostrum. So before we go any further, just in case, before we do our introduction questions and all of that stuff, I'm gonna switch the order up just a little bit because I think it's important to reestablish what the definition of Christian nationalism is. And we are not new to this conversation. In case you're new to Holy Smokes and you don't know what type of stuff we talk about, this is a conversation that we've been having now for the past couple of years. And I want to invite one of our friends in to give us this definition. And then April, if you want to add on to this, this is our friend Tim Winokur of the New Evangelicals. You can also catch Tim and April on YouTube. What do y'all have going on, April, you and Tim?
Well, currently we do weekly recaps on the New Evangelicals where we recap the news, but we're in the process of starting a new show in the next few weeks, just called the Tim and April Show, where we're going to talk about news and culture from a progressive Christian perspective.
Yes. So Tim and April, it's coming up. Here's Tim when he was on Holy Smokes in May of 2023, giving us the definition of Christian nationalism. So here it is.
Christian nationalism says that America was founded as a Christian nation and that Christians have an obligation to keep America Christian. It's not just any Christianity. It's usually Christianity steeped in white supremacy. It's really whiteness and the Christian view of that is advocating for really taking over both the culture and the government by legislating their Christian principles from the bench or in public life. So it's really quick, just to be clear.
How do you do? You did all right?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Christian nationalism is hard to define because there's so many different definitions out there, and most people that perpetuate Christian nationalism will say they're not a Christian nationalist, that they're just being a good Christian. So it's a little murky in the way, but he's absolutely right. I would also just add, like, on a small scale, like at a very basic level, Christian nationalism is a conflation of someone's political ideology with their faith beliefs.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. This is a really important conversation, y'all. We need to know about this because Christian nationalism is running the government right now.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a really important conversation that we've been having now. That clip of Tim came from an episode called The Sin of Christian Nationalism. It was released by Holy Smokes, May 2023. We're actually going to provide a resource post in Patreon soon with a bunch of Christian nationalist resources. So I have a link to that episode. I have a link to watch Bad Faith, God and Country, a link to April's book, a link to a book called The Power Worshippers, which is another book that I read about Christian nationalism. Like there's a lot to learn and know, just to be aware of what's going on. All right, so now that we got that out the way, let's get into some introductions. I want to know what everybody's smoking and drinking this week, if anything. And then by way of introduction, tell us what aspect of Christian nationalism is the most fascinating or concerning to you. So I'll start and I want to kick it back over to April. All right. So Christian, host, and the heretic. I'm drinking water right now. I went to my cigar lounge earlier in the city and I had an old fashioned and a Liga Privada T52. I took a picture of it and shared it on my Instagram because all the black church folk are mad that I said I smoke, cuss, and drink. So I posted a picture of me smoking and drinking. And I tagged April. April, I'm sorry if that was like offensive to your audience. How does your audience feel about that?
I don't think they care. I've done vibrator ads before, so
you should do one for the Rose of Sharon. Oh my
That's
God.
right there.
Yes. Do you know? Listen, no, for real. Like, reach out to Rose. Seriously, reach out to Rose.
I should. It's right there. It's begging.
I'm telling you, it's low hanging fruit. Oh, God. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay. What aspect of Christian nationalism concerns or fascinates me? I'm gonna go with the fascination part. And April has really woken this up for me with understanding how a Christian nationalist mind is formed. Because I've always been able to observe whiteness from the outside looking in, but April's book really gives me a glimpse of Christian nationalism from the inside out. And it has been fascinating to me because I really care about this stuff, because I feel like the Black fundamentalist church is Christian nationalist light. And we've talked a whole lot about that. And that's kind of how that stuff works, right? Because we get our theology in the Black fundamentalist church from white evangelical fundamentalism. We just imitate what they do theologically. And that's why you had all of these Black Christian influencers who were subtly telling you not to vote for Kamala, or straight up telling you not to vote for Kamala, and talking about Trump is like the King Cyrus. I'm gonna repost that video of Tiffany Montgomery saying all that bullshit, because I did a whole video on that. So I'm really fascinated by how these like thoughts take root in people's minds, because again, they're running the government right now. So yeah, that's me. April, I don't know if you smoke or drink anything, but if not,
I drink wine occasionally. I don't really smoke because I'm bad at. I've never smoked a cigar, but I'm like I mainly do gummies.
Got you. Yeah.
But right now I'm drinking throat coat tea because this is my
A big dip.
Bill mug.
Yes.
So really going wild over here. So those are the third question. What aspect of Christian nationalism is the most fascinating or concerning? I'm not really fascinated by Christian nationalism anymore because it's just been my whole life either in it and then now fighting it. I think the most concerning thing is what you said, is just how close they are to gaining absolute power. They don't have it yet. And I'm hoping that there's enough adults in the room that will keep that from happening. But that is concerning because I know what they want, because I used to want that.
How close do you think they are?
It just, like, if all these executive orders keep going through without any, like, I know he's going to get pushback, but if it all goes through, I don't know, like a term.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he did say when he was campaigning, Christians, just go out and vote. You won't have to vote anymore in 4 years. Right. And I keep reminding people of that, like, yo, he said that when he campaigned.
Well, yeah, and Project 2025, they're like, he doesn't know what that is. He's never heard of Project 2025, but like 34 or 37, like a 2/3 of his executive orders all come straight from Project 2025. So of course they lied. We knew they were lying.
Of course.
That is one thing I am refusing to let happen to me these next 4 years, is I'm refuse to be gaslit.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to do that to me. I don't know why I'm being flurry. We'll just, there we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the gaslighting is like, especially with the Nazi salute.
It's so annoying. Like, we're not stupid.
Yeah, but apparently they think we are. All right. Let's kick it over to our Lord and slanderer, Stephen Thurston. What are you smoking and drinking this week? And then what aspect of Christian nationalism concerns or fascinates you the most?
What's up, people? I am drinking mango and cranberry juice mixed together to refresh my soul and my spirit. And I'm smoking a Guanamontera Cuba Habano. Decent little stick here. Mild to get you through whatever you're going through. As it relates to what's concerning me, concerning Christian nationalism, is understanding that facts alone will never be enough, and talking to individuals that support and purport this ideology. because while education about the Constitution's principles and the historical reality of religious pluralism in America is vital, we're ultimately confronting a movement that speaks to profound emotional and existential needs. And so not being able to clearly converse and communicate and convince in some instances is what concerns me.
I love that one. That's one of my favorites. Yeah, I say it all the time, man. Like, I forget where I got this from, but I've just kind of absorbed it, that people don't use facts to form their beliefs. They use their beliefs to form facts.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter. Like, people will be trying to read. You can't reason with unreasonable people. People
True.
go, well, look, it says right here. These people don't care what it says right here. You gotta resist these people.
Yeah.
Now, like, April has a different perspective, because like April can communicate to them in different ways, because white people more than they listen to black people, just like straight people listen to straight people more than they listen to gay people, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But I'm not in the mood to be trying to reason with these people. All right, Rich, Auntie, what you smoking and drinking this week? And then what aspect of Christian nationalism is most fascinating or concerning to you?
Okay. I am smoking a little Marathon OG. That's my favorite strain right now. A little drink. I have some water and I have a little mixed cocktail that I'm nursing because I've become a very light drinker. Shame. Anyhow. Um, and I'll say the thing about Christian nationalism that both fascinates and terrifies me is something you kind of mentioned, the Black entanglement. I tell people, like, I grew up a Christian nationalist and I'm Black, and the the realization that so much of my suffering and my obsession with suffering was because I was indoctrinated to believe that I was sinful because I was Black. Like, it was just too much. And I think now what stood out in the comments, Joy said something about, going to a Christian school. And I went to a Christian school K-8. So there was so much of my formative education that even though I went to a Black church, and grew up with a family that was very pro-Black, like almost Pan-African behavior, I still came out as an adult having Christian nationalist tendencies and aligning with that identity, even when it was against my own self-interest.
Mhm.
That felt like a Such Was I segment. Jeez.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's real. Here's something I thought about with Christian nationalism in the Black church. Because and the more I understand Christian nationalism, of course, it's rooted in fundamentalist theology. But what's different in Black church fundamentalism and white church fundamentalism through Christian nationalism? Like, in the white church, it's all of this like purity culture, fundamentalism, but they're taught to bring their version of heaven to earth.
Mhm.
We got to take over the government. We got to run everything. But in the Black church, we're taught to suffer until we get to heaven in the afterlife. So white people are being taught, bring your version of heaven to earth, and Black people are being taught, suffer until you get to heaven. Because, don't even worry about it down here. You're screwed. Wait till heaven. And I think that's some of the most insidious shit ever, that we're still digesting a theology that is not concerned with our current existence. And I don't admire white Christian nationalists for that, for wanting to bring their heaven to earth. I don't admire that. I just recognize we're getting two totally different messages through the same theology. And that is like, it's actually infuriating how many Black people are just comfortable with, you know, coming up the rough side of the mountain, you know, I'll get it over yonder, you know, going up to heaven. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of it. Let's go to our next segment. Y'all know what it is.
Reaching for the stars.
All right, reaching for the stars. This is our segment where we talk about how people just say like the wildest stuff. Sometimes it's because they're arguing with us and they're making stuff up in their arguments. And sometimes we just see wild stuff on the internet. And this was one of those that somebody shared in our ecosystem in Patreon about surrounding your house in the blood. So here we go, reaching for the stars.
Did I just spend a freezing cold afternoon walking around my yard in the snow, pouring grape juice along the entire perimeter of my property? Yes, I did. And also, I know what you're thinking. She's finally lost it, but hang in there with me. I heard another Christian talking recently about how we use the oil to anoint our homes and our people, but what we really need for protection is the blood, as in the blood of Jesus. She said if your house is filled with chaos, yelling, fighting, things breaking, just pure madness, then honey, you might need to break out the Welches. And I was like, say less, except I went with the Kroger brand because budget. She told this story about how things in her own life were spiraling out of control, and a pastor friend had suggested that she anoint her property with the blood of Jesus. And she did it, and bam, peace, blessings, testimony galore. And listen, with the way things have been going around here lately, I figured, why the heck not? If nothing else, I get a little workout in, tromping through the snow and some fresh air. I already know some of y'all are going to go wild over this, like the time I threw my crystals out to be nearer to him, but honestly, I don't care. At worst, I wasted $6 on grape juice, and at best, my house is protected by the blood of Jesus, and we finally hop off this wild, chaotic, awful roller coaster that we've been stuck on. So here's to blessings, peace, and divine protection, and maybe some confused neighbors too, wondering why the heck I'm out here baptizing my yard in grape juice.
I love how
go
she
first,
was
Abe.
like that, like she just quickly threw in there, like that one time I threw out my crystals to get closer to God.
Yes.
Like, you know, that tells me she's like anti-witchcraft while doing witchcraft. That little whatever she did, that's a spell.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Also, grape juice. I feel like if you're gonna actually think that Jesus's blood, I feel like you got to go full on Catholic wine, right? Not Protestant grape juice.
Oh no, but she's Protestant. You know, you're not supposed to drink. You know how much hell I've been catching for drinking? Can't use wine. That's a sin. What? You better get that Welch's grape juice. We don't drink wine in the house of the Lord.
Yeah, she couldn't cough up the extra 30 cents for Jesus to get the name brand Welch's too.
No.
Right. I'm like, that's not even your best offering. God deserves better.
That's not even your best offering. Yeah, the crystals part was it for me. And I think the way they incorporate the stigmatizing of crystals into everything, like I'm so sick of hearing fundamentalists stigmatize crystals. And people will say, oh, well, you know, she just kind of mentioned it in passing. But when you get all of these different voices stigmatizing or demonizing crystals in some shape, form, or fashion, that little subtle hint of it in that video, it actually sticks because you got other people who are telling you if you use crystals, you're demonic.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like Christian nationalism, it's a system of belief. So you get multiple voices all reinforcing the same message. And you got a whole generation of people out here telling folk that if they use crystals, they go into hell and they're demonic while doing a spell around your house. I don't understand it.
Oh.
Fixing, and it's also interesting to continue to see religious leaders and religious fanatics fixate on matters like this while conveniently ignoring the real shit that matters. Like you go on their timeline, their page, ain't said shit about Gaza, ain't saying shit about Haiti, ain't saying shit about the Sudan, but you want to talk about fucking crystals and roses and shit that really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of how it impacts global society and culture at large. Like, the selective outrage about things is very misplaced.
Very, very misplaced. And especially in the Black church, because like the people in the Black church who talk about crystals, they really ain't talking about any of the like political stuff going on, and not just politics for the sake of talking about politics, but for the sake of talking about what's affecting the people in your pews,
Right?
What's affecting their everyday lives. And then when you look at the white fundamentalist Christian nationalist space, when they talk about politics, they talk about from a totally different perspective. It's so wild. It's so wild. Like, yeah. Y'all want to add anything about covering or surrounding your house in the blood?
It doesn't fucking work.
What was she protecting herself from?
Immigrants.
Probably trans people.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Trans.
Right. The Haitian
drag
community.
children. Abortion. The normal shit.
She's acting like a
cracks.
dark plague's coming over her house.
Yes.
Look, this is so triggering to me because when I was in my evangelical spaces, I used to do the Bound for Life rallies. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed.
What is that? What is Bound for Life?
Learn us.
Please tell us.
So Bound for Life is like an anti-abortion organization.
Oh.
And they go around and they do prayer protest rallies. So they stand in front of the abortion clinic or Planned Parenthood, and you put red tape over your mouth and write the word life in a black Sharpie. And then you pray this weird ass voodoo. I'm sorry, I'm not doing that. That's anti-black. You pray this weird ass prayer and you're like, Jesus, forgive me of my sins against this nation. God, send revival and free America from abortion. And it's just weird. You just do witchcraft shit and say it's not witchcraft. And yeah, I'm ashamed that I ever did it, but I was deep in those streets.
It feels so normal when you're in it, though.
Right?
It's like just another Tuesday.
Right. It's like me and my friends, like, what are you doing tomorrow? My other friend's like, I'm going to the movies. Oh, I'm going to a Bound for Life prayer rally with my other Bible study zealots.
You just reminded me of the story that April told in the book when they were watching the Oscars and they had to pray during all of the commercial breaks.
Oh, that was one of the worst nights of my life. I mean,
please tell us.
It was so awkward. Okay. So I went to Pat Robertson's graduate school, Regent University, and I was on the student government, and we were going to throw a Oscar watch party because it was like a film school. So obviously it makes sense for a film school to watch the film awards. And so the administration agreed to let us use their space, but they said, but you have to make it a prayer party. And so they're like, the only way we could use the space, and they like gave us money for food and stuff, is we would watch the Oscars. But then anytime there was a commercial break, we had like a whole itinerary of who we had to pray for. So like we would pray for all the winners of whoever just won the awards. And like we would take turns praying, and I had to run it with like one of my other friends. And so it ended up being me praying a lot, and you run out of stuff to pray for after. So like, I don't know who this person is who just won best wardrobe for the artist. And it's like, God, like and then like we'd run out of time because the commercials were long. And so then we're just praying for random celebrities to get saved and to put Jesus in their movies. And honestly, I wanted to like
Jesus in their movies.
Seriously, I wish I was joking. There was this it was a ministry called a Hollywood Prayer Network. I think they still exist, that had like partnered with us. So they had like a whole brochure of like how to watch the Oscars like as a Christian, which means you just have to pray for them because it's Hollywood and all that stuff. But yeah, there was one time I even thought it was kind of silly even then. And I tried to just like take a break. It was like, okay, the commercials are going, but most people were kind of like eating their stuff. So I just like didn't get up right away to do the prayer. It's like, we just need a break. And there was a rule follower in the place is like tapping. He's like, "Shh, we're supposed to pray." I'm like, yeah. So I got up like, all right, anyone want to lead this prayer? It was awful.
Oh God. So for the lady who surrounded her house in the blood as a replacement for the witchcraft of those crystals, and to April and all of her friends for having an Oscars prayer watch party, we want y'all to know you have been
Reaching for the stars.
Jeez.
I still have yet to see Ben Stiller put Jesus in any of his films, so our prayers did not work.
Y'all ain't got no power.
No.
That's so interesting. It really makes me think about the phrase indoctrination is a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand the extent of Christian nationalist indoctrination. Like it is such a massive undertaking that has been going on in its current iteration, like the current iteration of Christian nationalism for like the past 50 years. And they've just kind of like been building up to this moment for the past 50 years in plain sight. And, of course, April wrote a book about it, Spangled Jesus. And I personally, April, would like for you to tell us, how were you taught American history in your Christian nationalist upbringing? Because I got a totally different teaching in my pro-black church, Black history, all of that stuff. But you talk about like the world that you were born into. So like, tell us, what was your understanding of U.S. history when you were growing up?
I would love to tell you. I first just want to clarify too, I grew up Christian nationalist, but I did not know it. So this is very mainstream for anyone that just grows up in like modern American white evangelical culture. But yeah, so I basically grew up believing that America was founded as a Christian nation, that God supernaturally blessed George Washington and all of the troops to leave the tyrannical reign of England, who were godless people, to start America. And that even though, and it was a brand new land, no one else was here. Sure, maybe there were some Native American people, but they didn't really count because they weren't Christians. And we made them Christian, and so we actually made their lives better. I'm just telling you what I was taught. And then Christopher Columbus was a godly man. I'm skipping back a little bit. That like literally, he was a godly missionary, was what I was taught about Christopher Columbus. And then basically all throughout American history, God supernaturally blessed America through all of our wars because we were Christian. And even though slavery was a thing, it was true Christians like Abraham Lincoln, who was a Republican, who freed the slaves. And no one in the South was a Christian. They were all bad people. And so it was Christians who abolished slavery, because we were on that side, obviously. And then basically racism was over. I literally never learned anything about Jim Crow or Black Wall Street, the massacre there. Like, I didn't know any of that. It was pretty much like, and yeah, there was like some Black people like couldn't vote for a while, but they really could. It was just like a misunderstanding. And then Martin Luther King came in and then fixed all of that. And we loved Martin Luther King because he was a Christian and we all supported him and he was great. And then basically that ended racism forever.
Yo, this shit is insane. This shit is insane.
I mean, that's like common knowledge. And like, obviously American exceptionalism is in there. But the reason why all of that, like the way they have to twist history like that, is because We believed America was founded by God, founded as a Christian nation. And if you believe that God is good and he is a part of America, then you cannot admit that any part of American history is bad, that America was ever bad. Because if America was ever bad, then that makes God bad. And God can't be bad because we worship God. So America just has to be good. So it must have just been a misunderstanding. So we just need to rewrite this history so that America and God are always good.
That's painful. And the fact that generations of white Christians have been indoctrinated to believe that. And of course, we're not talking about all white Christians. You know, one of our recurring cast members, Nikki, the anchor, like Nikki grew up in like a moderate white church. So sometimes we talk about Christian nationalism and she'll be like, I really don't know a lot about that because I wasn't raised in that type of white church. So definitely not talking about everybody, but like that level of indoctrination where you are born into an echo chamber that completely distorts all of American history in that way. Have you seen the movie The Campaign with Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis?
Is that an older movie? It's been
like 2010.
I think so. It's been a while though.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies. I like comedies like that. And there was a scene where, you know, Zach Galifianakis and Will Ferrell were competing for some type of political office, and they were having a debate. And what your story just reminded me of something that Zach's character said. He was like, and I represent the greatest American to have ever lived, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I was never explicitly taught that Jesus was white, but every painting I ever saw of Jesus was white. And I remember someone insinuated that he might be not white. And I remember being like, what? No. Like, no one ever told me, but I just believed that Jesus was white because that's all I ever saw. And the Jesus that we talked about seemed to really want all the same things that all of the white people around me wanted as well.
Yes, white Jesus is a figment of the white imagination, literally. John Henry Clark said white Jesus is one of the greatest tools of propaganda in human history. The creation of white Jesus. So, like, what did April's breakdown of American history, like, what did that make y'all feel like? How did that like not align with what you were taught? What thoughts do you have? Because that is wild to me.
The creation of the canon and how certain aspects of the Old Testament were connected to the New Testament by writers, and the shit really didn't connect, and they had to do this stuff to make God appear one way and Jesus appear one way. I see that thread running through there. And then beyond that, just what the fucking wow. Like, how do you twist and eradicate and erase all of this major shit to frame this narrative? And it has stuck. There's some genius behind this work too.
Diabolical genius.
Yes.
Diabolical genius. Absolutely.
I was going to say what stood out for me is like something that I've been struggling with as I've considered this topic. And it's just how this can weave itself into everything about who you are, right? And I think that, I don't know, I'm trying not to be like emotional. Like, I'm extremely triggered because at the very end of it, when I would go to school, I would have this experience as a young Black Christian girl, because I did the whole Jesus accept Jesus at 9 thing, 8 or 9. And at home, I'm being told, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, Black girl. Like, you made in the image of God, Black girl. Like, all the Black history, just a very affirming home. And then when I go to school, it's the opposite. And so I think of how that has led to some of the things that I've struggled with just in terms of my own worth, in my faith walk, in my moving away from identifying myself as only Christian and only the Christian things, because we're so, for those of us who grew up in this way, it's so indoctrinated into making us believe that this is what you have to do to be a good person. This is what you have to do to be accepted. And when you don't do those things, you have to struggle with the inner parts of you that still feel like you're not worth it because you were told that from birth to whatever age you decided to start deconstructing. And it still comes up. I just am shocked sitting here listening to what April's saying, because even though I'm a Black woman, I was in white evangelical spaces. So it resonates. Like, I went to Regent. I remember when Barack Obama was coming to Virginia to do a rally, and my friends were like, "You're going to that devil man's rally?" And I'm like, what? Like, I'm a Democrat. Y'all thought I was a Republican because I go to Regent? But that is what people think, that you believe every single thing that they believe, even when it's against your own self-preservation.
That's so real. Like, April, tell us about the connection between Christianity and the Republican Party within the realm of Christian nationalism.
Like the history of it, or as it
Just
exists?
like sure. Tell us how they got connected.
Well,
in your experience,
Yeah. Well, I think it really started like your modern idea of the Republican Christian or white evangelical marriage. You could trace back to the 50s with Billy Graham and Dwight Eisenhower, which Billy Graham later came out to say that he would be that he's against marrying the GOP with Christian policies, that they would just manipulate each other. But initially, he was monumental in getting "In God We Trust" being the official model on the coin. Like, it was his influence on Dwight Eisenhower that made that happen. The National Prayer Breakfast became a thing under that administration as well because of Billy Graham's influence. And "Under God" was added into the pledge in the 50s as well. And really, it was to combat communism, that they seemed as godless communism. So they were like, okay, well, we just need to be more godly to fight communism. And Dwight Eisenhower was the president that kind of allowed Billy Graham to come in, and he really kind of joined forces with Christianity to fight communism, but then it just kind of grew from there. And then I think it really took off again in the 70s with Jerry Falwell and the Moral Majority. And he initially started getting white Christians involved in politics because of school integration. He was against school integration and wanted to basically didn't like that the government was telling their private Christian schools that they had to allow Black people in their schools. And so he made this whole thing of like, this is our Christian right, this is for religious reasons, blah, 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 blah. But then at a certain point that became unpopular. And so 5 years after Roe v. Wade made abortion legal, 5 years after that was when he made his first sermon against abortion. So initially, they didn't care about abortion at all. They cared about racial segregation, but that became unpopular as more people realized that's not cool. So then they focused on abortion. And then really abortion has been the key issue. I mean, there's a lot of people that would say abortion is their main issue, but I would also throw in gay and trans rights as well in there. That it's just, now it's trans people. When I was in it, it was gay marriage. That was our big gay marriage and abortion were like the two things. And now I feel like a lot of people have moved away from gay marriage, although it's kind of come into danger again.
Yep. They come up.
But yeah, that's like the brief history, I guess.
Yeah, you drop some good knowledge here. You're dropping some good knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
The connection between being a Republican and being a Christian, I didn't know about that until the past couple of years. I didn't know that's what was being taught because I came up in the space. Well, yeah, we weren't like Black people predominantly vote Democrat,
Right.
but not like, you know, to be a good Black Christian is to vote Democrat. It's just like, look at what's presented to us. You know, who do y'all think is going to, you know, cause the least amount of problems for us?
Right.
And usually it wound up being a Democrat. But when I learned that in Christian nationalist spaces, to be Christian means to be Republican, I was like, oh shit.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's a lot of people will outright say that today. I mean, even in this last election, I don't know how many countless white Christian influencers that said you could not be a Christian and vote for Kamala Harris. There's someone that said if you vote for a Democrat, you should be put under church discipline. Like that's not new. Like I grew up hearing that same rhetoric too. Like I thought all true Christians, like if you were a good Christian, you had to vote Republican. Even when I was in high school, I made a MySpace group. I don't know if y'all are on MySpace.
Heck yeah.
Top 8.
Yes.
That was like our first like major like millennial catastrophe of having to deal with the drama of the top 8.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if y'all remember that at
People
all. Anyway,
didn't want to be left out.
oh, it was so dramatic. It's like so just cruel. Anyway, but I made a MySpace group called I'm a Christian, therefore I'm a Republican. And I had all my friends join, like everyone in my church was like, yeah, of course, obviously. And like we knew that some Christians voted Democrat. Like Black people in our churches, we knew that they voted Democrat, but we kind of just like I remember asking like, well, why did they vote Democrat? And I remember just being told like, well, they just don't know better would be the answer. And, you know, when you're a kid, you're just like, oh, okay. And it really was drilled into me. Like the earliest memory that I have of realizing Republicans represent good Christians and Democrats represent bad was during the Bill Clinton scandal. I was maybe like 10 years old, and it was on the news where he was talking about you know, what happened with Monica Lewinsky. He was like, I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Not have sexual
Yes.
relations with that woman.
And I remember my dad like kind of telling me what was going on. And he was like, well, Republicans want to impeach him because if he would cheat on his wife and lie to his wife, of course he's going to lie to the American people. And we want Christians in the White House. We want good character, good moral character in the White House. And Republicans care about that because Republicans stand for Christian moral characters and Democrats do not. And so that was like drilled in my head. Republicans good, Democrats bad.
And then Trump happened. And what happened? What happened with you when Trump happened?
Yeah. So hold on.
I'm sorry. Steve, were you gonna say something? I'm sorry.
No. We were about to say the same thing at the same time.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yes.
Right. I will say I think Trump woke up a lot of people that were like me, that grew up in that world, that remembered Bill Clinton. And then now we're seeing that not being fairly applied to Donald Trump. So, I mean, I'll say I kind of started deconstructing even before Trump too, from like some other things, but Donald Trump was the last straw for me because I was like, I remember what y'all said to me about Bill Clinton and I believed you. And here you're all like, oh no, it's just locker room talk. Oh, he's just a baby Christian. Oh, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And we just got to forgive him. Who among you has never sinned? It was just like all this stuff. I'm like, but then they're saying like Hillary can't be president because of her emails. Like God couldn't use Hillary. I was like, okay. That was like the first like light bulb that was like, something's not adding up here. And then I knew like the whole time. I will say, I will tell my grandkids this. I was a never Trumper. I was Republican in 2016, but I did not vote for that man. And I will put it on my gravestone. That was never Trumper. But But yeah, that was like the first light bulb. And then I was like, okay, I know I'm right about this. I know that man is not a Christian. You're trying to gaslight me and say he's some godly saint here to save Christianity. So I was like, if you're wrong about this, what else have you taught me that is also wrong? And I was on quite the journey figuring all those things out.
Yes. Yes. And I think there is a lot of overlap with the Black church experience. And I would love to see like what Steve and Autumn think about that overlap, because I'm just thinking about the Black church leaders and Christian influencers who subtly push the same message of like Tiffany Montgomery. And I mean, people, and see, this is the thing for me. When I call out the dangerous rhetoric from these people, I get a bunch of Black church folk like, you tearing somebody else down, and that's your problem. You just trying to tear somebody else down. And I'm like, y'all, they are preaching Christian nationalism from their pulpit, and they're putting it on social media for millions of Black people to ingest. Like Tiffany Montgomery said the whole Kamala is a witch and Trump is like King Cyrus, which is a Christian nationalist talking point. And then everybody's new favorite, Philip Anthony Mitchell, there's a clip roaming around of him saying that it's idolatry to see Jesus or identify with Jesus as a Black man. He said it's Marxist. Like that's a term that he threw out, right? And you know, communism, Marxism, socialism, these are like boogeyman terms in American right-wing politics. But like for those of us here, Angela Davis was a Marxist, is a Marxist. Fred Hampton was a socialist. But what we're getting from these Black Christian influencers is the Black version of what April is teaching us right now. It's happening right now in real time. That's why I'd be so pissed off when I call it out and folk act like I'm doing something wrong. Like, what? You're mad at me? They just told you that you shouldn't see yourself in Jesus, and you're mad at me for calling them out for saying that? That is insane to me.
Yeah.
What y'all think?
The almighty white evangelical dollar that controls these Black faces and pushes them to the point of developing prophetic laryngitis. That is a problem. And they will find these young, charismatic, great oratorical presenters and push them and platform them. That's why I've called out the names that I've called out on this platform, because I have a mega church. I know how much this shit costs. And I know people that are popping up overnight and they got all this budget, screens, lights. Y'all do know like them LED screens are 6 figures.
I'm telling you.
Somebody who just started a church who does not have the ability, like you have to have a lot of shit to get a loan from a bank. One of my friends goes to a church in Houston, Nigerian Black pastors pastoring, and she's so in love because he's got a prophetic gift and all of that. And I'm like, how this motherfucker don't even have a visa? He got a loan for $4.1 million to buy this property, and he's doing all of this. And you don't understand that that's white Christian nationalism that he's speaking, and white evangelical dollars that finance all this bullshit for him. Stop that. We can't be so caught up in the gifts and the prophetic and all of that bullshit that we miss the harm and the damage that's coming out of the mouth of the people that stand on these platforms doing Jesus in drag. Because it's really Christian nationalism.
Follow the money.
Every time.
Money.
And
there's a lot of money to be made. If especially from a minority group that's not especially a white male, but it's just a white person. Anyone who's not white, if they're willing to speak that ideology, they get a platform.
Yes.
Boom.
excuse my language, motherfucking boom. Y'all can't tell me these people who out here spreading this shit not getting paid by these folks. Ooh, yeah. Rich Auntie, what's up?
I think, child, I'm sorry.
You caught up. You all
I am. I'm all of the things. Like something that kind of stood out when April was talking was what she was saying about 2016, the Trump stuff being a big year of significance for her. And that was a year of significance for me too, because I had already started deconstructing like in 2009, but I got deep into it in like 2014. And I left the Black church because of the obsession with money and the homophobia. But because I grew up, in American Christianity too, I was like, let me go find me a little, Starbucks jeans and coffee church. And I'll get in for my 45 minutes and my good charismatic worship and go home. And I was at a church that was very, jeans, plaid, and we all love each other, kumbaya. And I remember the pastor at the time was talking about Trump being God's trumpet. And that was like the last day that I attended church for about 4 years.
Wow.
And then I came to TFC. So I was just thinking about my own shift and how I feel like a lot of Black people, regardless of what church they're in, they're really suffering from Stockholm syndrome because of indoctrination. You know deep down that it's dangerous and harmful and you shouldn't be there, but you've become acclimated to it. And so it's too hard to think about leaving. You're going to leave the comfort of community. You're going to leave protection. You're going to lose your friends. You're going to have to start over. And then thinking critically when you've not been taught to do that is very painful and scary. So I'm just in awe of how Christian nationalism is a universal danger and how it impacts the psyche. Because I was actually talking to someone today, doing one of our pay it forward calls, and she was exposed to Holy Smokes, but she's in the UK, and she was telling me about her experience with nationalism and how in England there's like Black Pentecostalism split into African Pentecostalism and Caribbean Pentecostalism. So it's just so amazing because it's all colonialism and it's all empire, but it shows up in supremacy culture, specifically white supremacy, which is in all of our churches, regardless of the race.
That's one of the things I was hoping we'd be able to do in this conversation is kind of connect some dots between what April writes about, the content that she makes, and how that carries over into Black church traditions. Because, April tells a story about growing up in a predominantly white church, they kind of had Black people there just, so they could say they were multicultural and multiracial, but it was white, right? And so it's a different world. Like it's a totally different world that she comes from and that we come from, but there's this overlap that I really want us to see, that like it's really not that far away. April, you talked about in the book the seven mandate, the seven mountains mandate, and you also talked about your time in Christian media. So like, can you tell us just like briefly what the seven mountain mandate is about, and specifically how does Christian media have an impact on the spread of Christian nationalism?
Yeah, so the Seven Mountain Mandate is it's more in like white charismatic spaces, but it and I think it comes like Bethel Church, Bill Johnson, they're big on the Seven Mountain Mandate. So that kind of group, NAR. So Seven Mountain Mandate is basically this belief, it's this charge, this call from God himself that was sent down in a vision to a couple people that basically says that Christians must have control of the seven mountains of influence in the world. And that's like family, religion, education, government, media, arts and entertainment, and military. I think that's 7. Anyway, but basically everything that could have influence on you, there's 7 mountains, and that Christians must control those 7 mountains before Jesus can come back, basically. And that's kind of like the bring the heaven to earth idea of like, well, there's really no perfect heaven unless Christians are in control. And so that there's this push to control all of those those spheres of influence, and media and arts and entertainment are one of those. So that's one reason too why you have such a push. Like if you think about it, anything you can have secular, there is a Christian alternative. There's Christian radio, there's Christian movies, Christian television shows, Christian news. They've made it to where if you wanted to never have to go to anything quote unquote secular, you could get it from a faith-based organization. And so media was one of these. And then you wanted me to tell about my time in media? Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Tell us about your time in media and how it, helped spread Christian nationalism.
Yeah. So it's all interconnected. I worked for the 700 Club. I was a producer for CBN. Technically, it was I produced those little mini like testimonial videos for 700 Club Interactive, and sometimes they would play on the 700 Club. So I worked there, and we'd be in these pitch meetings, and we would do, we would do like the miracle stories, the healings, I remember I did a story on like a 1-year-old who was healed from cancer. And like, we definitely like did the story as if the baby was healed, but the baby went through full chemo and like medical treatments, and the doctors, like they did the whole thing, but they didn't give the doctors any glory. It was a miracle from God.
God,
So, and I remember like, even as I was making that, I was like, does this count as a miracle? But anyway, so there was one time I wanted to do a story on a celibate gay man who was blogging about being gay, like knowing that about him, praying that God would, change him. God didn't, and just accepting that about him, but being celibate. And at this time, I was not queer affirming yet, but I was on my way. Like I was to the point where I was like, I don't think just being gay is a sin. Like I don't think they can help it. Like that's kind of where I was. And so I was like, well, why don't we do the story on this celibate gay man? Like he's got a big platform, and it's real, it's honest. Like I think there's a lot of people that could benefit from this. And I was like immediately shot down, and they're like, no, like we only want to do stories of complete healing from that, because it might give people the wrong idea that God doesn't heal. And I remember like getting continually frustrated, because I'm also coming from the background where my dad, when I was in 2011, I was 23, my dad got stage 4 cancer, lung cancer, and then like passed away after 4 months after we believed that he was going to be healed and for a miracle. And so I already knew that God doesn't always answer your prayer. And they were but if you only watched our show, you would think that God answered your prayer every time. And if God didn't answer your prayer, it was because of probably something you did, because God actually does want to answer all of your prayers and do all those miracles. So there's like that toxic, like healing, what is it? Like faith seed theology, all the buzzwords, but
yes.
yeah.
Word of faith stuff.
Right. And so like if you it feeds into the whole idea that queerness is a sin if you're never showing people that are living with queerness, even people that are being celibate or being gay. And so that those stories feed into the narrative that that basically push the fight against gay marriage or the fight against transgender rights, because you're like, oh no, look, God will heal them if they just ask. They're just not asking. So we just need to take their rights away so that they'll be forced to go to God instead. And it's like this really twisted way of thinking about it, because you actually think, or you convince yourself that you're actually doing them a favor, that you're doing something good for them, because in the end, they'll have a better chance of going to heaven because you're keeping them from doing the sin.
Yes, it is very much like you also mentioned in the book how the story of slavery is like white folk did us a favor because we would have been in Africa swinging from trees and we wouldn't know Jesus if it wasn't for white people coming to take us and enslave us and introducing us to Jesus. You can convince yourself of anything. Like indoctrination is a hell of a drug. It's not like, it's not even, I say drug because you're not even aware of how much of a lunatic you are. Like the deeper the indoctrinate, you don't know. It just seems regular.
Yeah.
It's like, this is how things are supposed to go, right? And people will be looking at you like, are you okay? And that's what Christian nationalism does to people. And so on the media piece, right, when we think about it, what April just said with media, and we think about the people who were heavy into that media space, like Daystar, 700 Club, TBN, right? Think about Clarence McClendon and all of that stuff that happened during the election. Clarence McClendon is one of the main people. Steve, you gonna say something?
Clarence be clowning because he getting that check. Again, it's follow the money.
Money.
You from here, you from downstate Illinois. Stop that bullshit. We know your people, Clarence. Your brother, we know your people, sir. Stop that shit.
I'm telling you. And then today, when you think about Christian nationalist media, Seven Mountains Mandate, how people are using media and especially now social media to push that message, and also like arts and entertainment. This is why I hate these movies with Priscilla Schreier. It is an extension of Christian nationalist propaganda. I cringe every time I see a black preacher say, y'all gotta go watch The Forge. No, the hell you don't.
Right.
No, it's Christian nationalists. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh,
and it's kind of crossed over to like Fox News and OAN News. Like the Republican Party has tapped in to Christian nationalism. Like they know the buzzwords. They say enough, like, you know, Christian values, family values. Like there's this, it's a dog whistle. They know what to say to get people to come into their side. And so like there's like this pre-approved list of things that you can trust. And when it's part of the indoctrination, not only are you given all of the sources for your information, you're also regularly told that outside information or anything that is secular is not to be trusted because it's from Satan.
An interesting dynamic to see play out. And before somebody says something ignorant, my mother's side of the family is Jewish. But to see white nationalism being pushed in media spaces owned by Jewish people.
Because they're Zionists.
Yeah.
So ever since October 7th, 2023, I have like immersed myself more into understanding Zionism. And now, okay, now I'm connecting the dots. Like, because you know, you have Jews who are anti-Zionist, but just like you have black church folk who are anti-fundamentalists. And Zionism is just an extension of white supremacy. So you have white supremacist Jews who are Zionists, you got white supremacist Christians who are Zionists. It's just
strange bedfellows.
Yeah, we have Christian Zionists too. Like Zionism is a huge part of Christian nationalism as well. With the whole, you know, God will curse whatever nation curses Israel, bless whatever nation blesses you. Like you must always protect Israel. Like that was a huge part of my upbringing all the time. Like you always support Israel, no matter what.
Same thing in the black church. We got Zionist tendencies. Did y'all deal with any black churches that had Zionist tendencies?
Oh yeah, they got the prayer shawls, and they say, anyway, I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. But yeah,
No, do it.
They got the prayer shawls, and they blow the shofar, and they, say what April just said, that if we're against Israel, we're against God, and they take biblical stories out of context and use them as the playbook of this big war that we're in as we hasten towards apocalypse, which they're creating, by the way.
Correct.
Yep.
It's not like we're naturally going there. It's that they're I was reading about the doomsday clock. I'm sorry, I'm kind of weird, but they were saying how it moved, like it's now like at 89 degrees, which is like we're literally like one decision, like one two stupid niggas facing off and pressing the red button again before we die as a whole world. And I can see that in how Zionism, white supremacy, it's all connected, and it's pushing us further away from each other and closer towards destruction of the world. But people who are nationalists, they really believe like, come Lord Jesus. Like, I remember being a part of IHOP Kansas City, like their prayer rooms, because I was really into prayer and worship, and they believe in having like a 24-hour prayer room, and they literally pray like, come Lord Jesus, like bring the destruction of Revelation, like put the horses on your rider and ravage the earth. And it's like, bitch, why are you praying like that?
The giddiness that I saw in like, I follow a bunch of like rapture Facebook groups, which there's a lot of them, and they have hundreds of thousands of members. But they were all so excited anytime anything happens in Israel, because it's going to be fulfillment of like closer to the rapture. They just want to leave. They just want to go to heaven. And that's also very detrimental to climate change, and why so many evangelicals either say it's a hoax or say it doesn't matter because Jesus is going to come back anyway. So like, why should we take care of the earth?
Yeah, that's just crazy.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Very weird, very weird. And the way it is spread by these people who we are conditioned to trust, like, because remember, Priscilla Schreier is Tony Evans' daughter, right? So that whole family pushes that kind of theology, right? It all comes from the same place. So that's why you have Priscilla Schreier saying, I'm not a black woman, I'm a Christian who happens to be black. And then she pulled back from that because she got a whole bunch of backlash, right? But that's something that they do in these, like, Christian nationalist think tanks. They try to figure out ways to frame stuff to see what people can handle. So they're like, let's try this language and see how it works. Okay, that didn't work. Oh, let's try this language. And I guarantee you, I'll put money on this. The whole idea is to get Black people to identify with their Christianity first and put their Blackness to the side, so that when you have Christians in government, Black people are confused. Like, well, I mean, they're Christians, so they got to be for us, right? I mean, because, they're Christians. We're supposed to be good with Christians. And the whole time they gutting your civil rights. And then you got Priscilla Schreier up here. You got Jackie Hill Perry. You got Philip Anthony Mitchell, who are either distracting you from what's going on or downright telling you that your Blackness is not as important as your Christianity. But when you get pulled over by the police, you don't get to say, I'm a Christian, so let me go. That's not how that works. When you go into a courtroom, you don't get to tell the judge, treat me differently because I'm a Christian. Yeah. That's not how that works. When an appraiser comes to your house, you don't get to say, I know, Black people's houses are usually appraised at lower levels, but I'm a Christian, so you shouldn't do me like that. That's not how that works. And that's why this conversation is like really important to me, because I don't think we realize how closely aligned Black fundamentalism is with Christian nationalism.
Yeah.
And this shit is serious.
Because all our theology is white. It's just a matter of how white you're going to stay. That's what I often teach when I'm teaching in Black churches and leading them. You gotta make a choice to decolonize and deconstruct.
Yes. So go ahead.
I was going to say, and for churches that are super traditional, Black churches that are super traditional or conservative, for example, like I know I grew up Baptist, we use curriculums that are from white-backed organizations. Like you have the entire, I remember my dad was a Sunday school superintendent, so we always used to go to Lifeway, and I'd be like, "Oh, let me get my little tumbler with Give God the Glory or Jeremiah 29:11." Like every single part of it is an external white standard that's being imposed, and we don't even have the sense to recognize it, or we're too corrupted by the capitalist parts of it where you get in your pockets lined.
Yeah.
My Lord. So how do we fight this? Like, how do we combat Christian nationalism as we go to our close? What do you do, April, to combat Christian nationalism? What can we do?
Well, I think, there's things you can do at a bigger level, which is, protest. Obviously, vote didn't work this time, but next time.
If there's a next time.
Yeah. Get involved in local communities. I think having local support, like in-person community, is going to be really important these next few years. I don't know what's going to happen, but having local people that you can trust will be important. I think the best way to fight Christian nationalism is, one, to be aware. I think the more aware people are about it, it's going to be harder for Christian nationalists to just keep doing what they're doing. Like, more and more people are starting to call it out. I think it's going to become more overt. It's already pretty overt. You've got J.D. Vance now talking about Bible verses completely out of context. And I think just continuing to call that, and honestly, like, the words of Jesus, the Gospels, are kryptonite to Christian nationalists, because they can only say deport all the immigrants so long when Jesus is literally like, no, welcome them. And they're like, nah, no.
Jesus is soft.
Yeah, right. Jesus is woke now. But I would say, like, on a one-to-one level, like, this is where I find hope, is that most people who perpetuate Christian nationalism, and I'm not talking about your figureheads, like the people that are the face of everything, the people in power in the government, the pastors. I'm not talking about them. Your everyday average person that perpetuates Christian nationalism really thinks they're doing the right thing. Like, they believe that what they're doing is holy and just and of God, which is scary on one hand. But on the other hand, if those people can be shown that what they are doing is causing harm, if they really want to be good, and what they believe about themselves is that they want to be good, and then they realize that they are causing harm, they have to change, because they'll either have to just shove it down and not have any integrity, or change and recognize that. And it can be hard. Like, everyone's going to have a different breaking point. But I do think these next few years, all these, executive orders that Trump's doing and a lot of his policies are going to hurt a lot of Christian nationalists that voted for him. Like, they're going to be finding out. Well, we're all going to be finding out, but they're going to be finding out too. And I do think a lot, like, we had a huge kind of deconstruction wave in 2020 with the combination of, like, George Floyd and the pandemic, and obviously Donald Trump was also a part of that. But I think we're going to be seeing that again these next few years. And so the best thing that I have to say, like, if you come in contact with anyone that perpetuates those kind of beliefs, asking them questions is the best way, I think, to engage, to get them to change, to get them to think on their own. Like, ask them, like, well, how do you justify separating like a child from their parents just because their parents are undocumented, but they don't have any crime. When Jesus says da-da-da, like, how do you justify that? And then just get them to explain it. They might double down and it may not make any sense at all, but it's going to plant a little seed in there. Or bring up intersex people. I will say intersex people really stumped me when someone brought that up to me when we're talking about trans people, because intersex people exist. Like, that is a fact. And you just ask them, like, well, how would you suggest an intersex person? Would they be male or female? Since those are only two options now, and just get them to explain it to you and just ask them questions. They'll eventually figure out that they don't actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll go just like this.
Yeah, the Bible says. What does that mean, Duffy? I mean, it means what it means.
Mm-hmm.
It means what it means. That's never going away, Steve. I just need you to know it's never going away. Yeah, being aware was my thing, April. Like, we gotta be aware. We gotta be aware of what's going on. Because, like, being ignorant doesn't serve us. Because danger is all around. And ignorance is not bliss when you're facing imminent danger. So, like, we need to be aware of what's going on. Follow people like April, read her book, engage with thinkers and creators and scholars who are providing the information so that we can be more informed, so that we can get more connected. And the community piece too. It's another piece that we talk about a lot here. Yeah. Steve, Autumn, like, how do y'all think we can counteract this stuff?
Yeah, when we wrap the cross and the American flag, I believe that we strangle the very faith that we claim to protect. And so we have to offer an alternative vision of American identity that's both inclusive and inspiring. So people need to see that pluralism and diversity aren't threats to American greatness, but it's very source. That's our strength. And it lies in our ability to forge unity from difference and to build community across divides. And so, as April said, raising those questions, engaging that Socratic method that allows people to come to an understanding on their own. Because as we talked about earlier, presenting facts isn't going to shift people. They have to come to this space and place on their own and do their own work. But it's our challenge, charge, and duty, I believe, to spur that thought process for them to move down the path.
You said wrapping the cross in the flag does what now?
Oh, Christian, you're trying to make me go viral. I know you. I know the tactics of the enemy. When we wrap the cross in the American flag, we strangle the very faith that we claim to protect.
Yes. All right, Rich Auntie, what do you think we can do to combat it? And then we're gonna kick it over to April for our closing thoughts.
Well, what I think we can do to combat it is, I think it's like what you guys said, following voices that are speaking the truth to power, educating ourselves, arming ourselves with true knowledge. What I will say that I'm doing is I'm minding my black ass business, and I'm also committed to, crying aloud and sparing not. I think I'm very aware of the imminent danger as a person who exists in several intersections that are literally in danger under a Trump administration and fascism. And for me, I believe in the legacies of our ancestors, in resistance, in rest, in community. And I'm just not going to be shaken by the chaos and the shock and awe that Christian nationalism is such a big part of. I mean, it builds up this frenzy, and it thrives on fear. So I think as someone who's come out of it, what Stephen just said is so true. Like, there was nothing anybody could tell me to make me abandon believing that Jesus was coming back and I needed to be found worthy. The only thing that changed that for me was an experience with God that I know marked me, and it was from love. So I'm committed to loving people, and love can look like a lot of things. Love can look like boundaries. Love could look like patience. Love could look like taking myself out of the equation and you lose access to me, and maybe that'll teach you a lesson. So I'm worried about self-preservation and how I can help other people from that safe place. Because I think, like April said, a lot of people are hurt and are going to continue to be harmed by this administration. And it's a very scary and hard place to be when you acknowledge the ways in which you have been a part of your own destruction. And I see that even with my faith. So I'll be here, but only to as much as I can preserve myself, because I don't want to go to jail in Trump's America. I'm trying to avoid enslavement. So
Listen, I mean, and that is as real as it gets, because that's what it is. Like, legally, 13th Amendment has a loophole. Slavery is legal unless you become a prisoner of the state, and then you are a slave to the state.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
Christian.
Yeah.
We challenge black churches to take that goddamn American flag down out the sanctuary too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, we should.
But they needed to pledge to it during Vacation Bible School.
My Lord, yeah, that was something that Tim Carruthers went through at his church, especially when you're in a military town and you got a bunch of veterans in the congregation and active duty military. Like, the indoctrination of the military is another strong indoctrination. Ooh, like, even somebody mentioned the other day, and I'm done, about how the military becomes more attractive the more poor people are. The more impoverished you are, the more attractive the military is, because the military promises you that you're going to get your basic needs met. So you join and they indoctrinate you into the America first, America is always right, fight for your country stuff. And they trade out your life for your basic necessities, because there aren't enough programs to actually support people who need basic necessities. I mean, it's really like a whole insane web of just like craziness. Before we go to April for the final words, Mika mentioned in the comments that there was a dollar jar. I'm pretty sure she was talking about when Steve said Socratic method. So I'm going to just hit him with this.
In the age of information, Google this shit. In the age of AI, drop that shit in there and let it give you a full scholastic breakdown. I went to damn too much school, got too many degrees for y'all to be sitting here bitching and moaning about these words. We have tech tools that will help you. So I believe that dollar jar needs to be damned to hell in 2025.
Never, ever. If it was about Socratic method, it's just a teaching method where you just ask a bunch of questions. That's all it is.
Don't define it for them. Let them do their own homework.
I mean, go look it up too, which is all of that.
It's giving pastor elect. Ow.
April, what will you leave us with tonight? What should we walk away with tonight, April?
Oh man. Well, I guess I was really, really in it, and now I'm not. So if I can change, anyone can. Some hopefulness, maybe.
Amen. Amen to that. All right, y'all. We've been here deconstructing harmful theology and building beloved community one cigar at a time. And Stephen just cussed us out for giving him the dollar jar. All right. Peace out.